I thought I was walking into a small birthday dinner. That was the first mistake. My mom texted me that morning, said she'd made my favorite roast chicken mashed potatoes, the kind of meal she only cooked when she wanted to remind people she was still the glue of the family. She added a smiley face at the end, which she never did unless she was trying too hard. Still, I didn't question it. 28 isn't exactly a milestone birthday, but my parents liked routines. Dinner at 6, same house in suburban Ohio. Same people, my dad, Warren, my mom, Cynthia, my brother, Connor, my sister, Sloane. Simple. Predictable. Safe. I parked in front of the house at 5:58 p.m. Lights were on inside, brighter than usual. Through the window, I could see movement, too much movement for 4 people. I paused for half a second, keys still in my hand, and told myself maybe they invited an aunt or two. I should have turned around right there. Instead, I walked in. The door wasn't locked. It never was. I stepped inside, and the first thing I noticed was the silence. Not the absence of noise. There were people breathing, shifting, but the kind of silence that feels organized, intentional. Then I saw them. The living room was full. At least 40 people. Extended family, neighbors, people from church. 2 of my old college professors, standing awkwardly near the back like they'd been dragged into the wrong event. Chairs were arranged in a clean semicircle, all facing the center of the room. And in the center, 1 empty stool. No balloons, no decorations, no cake. Just that stool. Every single person turned to look at me. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. You don't walk into a room like that and ask what's going on. Your brain already knows it's not good. My mom stepped forward. She was holding a microphone. That was new. "Blair," she said, like she was greeting a crowd instead of her daughter. "Thank you for coming." I glanced at the microphone, then at the people, then back at her. Yeah, I live 20 minutes away. Not exactly a commitment. A few people shifted uncomfortably. No one laughed. My dad stood off to the side, arms crossed, face locked into that serious expression he used when he wanted to look authoritative. Connor was near the TV next to a laptop. Sloane stood closer to the front, already holding a stack of papers. It clicked. Not emotionally, logically. This wasn't a dinner. This was structured. I stepped further into the room, closed the door behind me. No one moved to greet me. No one said happy birthday. "Are we doing something?" I asked, keeping my tone flat. My mom smiled, the kind that doesn't reach her eyes. "We are." She turned slightly, addressing the room instead of me. "We are gathered here tonight because Blair has lost her grip on reality," she said, clear and steady like she'd rehearsed it, "and our family can no longer hide her downward spiral." There it was. Not even a warm-up. A couple of people gasped softly. Someone in the back whispered something I couldn't make out. My professors avoided eye contact. I looked at my mom for a long second. "Wow," I said. "No cake first, you're skipping straight to the diagnosis." No reaction. Not from her. She gestured toward the stool. "Please sit down." I didn't move immediately. Not because I was resisting, but because I was recalibrating. When people show you a setup this clean, you don't interrupt it. You watch it. I walked over and sat on the stool. Every chair was angled toward me. 40 sets of eyes. Some sympathetic, some curious. A few already convinced of whatever story they'd been told. Connor cleared his throat behind me. The TV clicked on. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. The light from the screen shifted across the room and I could see the reflection in the window. A slideshow. Of course. My mom started talking again, pacing slowly like she was hosting a seminar. "For the past several years, Blair has been struggling," she said. "We've tried to support her privately, but her condition has worsened." Condition. Interesting word choice. I crossed one leg over the other, resting my hands loosely in my lap. If anyone was expecting a breakdown, they were going to be disappointed. "Roll it," she said. Connor hit a key. The first image appeared. A photo of me outside an office building. I looked tired. That was the point. This was taken last year, my mom narrated. She had just left another job. Another. I let that sit. They were framing a pattern. Next slide. A screenshot of a text message. Mine. Out of context, obviously. I'm overwhelmed right now. I can't keep doing this. Someone in the front row shook their head slowly. Next slide. A bank statement. Old, very old. An account I hadn't touched in years. Balance close to zero. She has been unable to manage her finances, my mom continued, despite our repeated attempts to help. I almost smiled. They'd done their homework, just not enough of it. I glanced at Connor. He avoided eye contact, focused on the laptop, like he was performing a job he didn't fully understand. Sloane stepped forward right on cue. She had perfected this role years ago, the concerned sister. Soft voice controlled emotion. We just want her to be safe, she said, looking around the room. We don't want her hurting herself or making decisions she can't come back from. She started handing out the papers. People took them. Read quickly. Nodded. I waited until one reached me. A printed packet. Clean formatting. Bullet points. Dates. Observations. A timeline. Documented behavioral decline, the header read. I flipped through it slowly. They'd built a case. Not for me. For everyone else. 40 witnesses. 40 people who could say they saw me presented as unstable, irresponsible, incapable. This wasn't about concern. This was about positioning. I turned another page. And that's when something slipped loose. A separate document, not clipped properly, slid out and landed near my foot. I picked it up without drawing attention. Different formatting. Legal language. Not medical. Not emotional. Financial. I didn't react. Didn't change my posture, just read. Voluntary conservatorship and power of attorney. My name at the top. My parents listed as controlling parties. Signature line already prepared. Not blank either. The notary section at the bottom had a stamp. Signed, dated. I glanced up just briefly. Second row. A family friend. Notary public. Sitting very still. That's when the entire room shifted in my mind. This wasn't an intervention. It was a transaction. And I was the asset. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I kept my face neutral and slid it back into the packet like it was just another page in their little story. No one noticed. Or if they did, they were too committed to the script to react. Connor clicked to the next slide. This was just 3 months ago, he said, trying to sound calm like a guy presenting quarterly results instead of tearing apart his sister's reputation. Another photo. Me leaving a cafe. Same angle, same idea. Catch me at the end of a long day, make it look like I'm falling apart. My mom took over again, her voice steady, controlled. She isolates herself. She pushes people away. She refuses help. I leaned back slightly on the stool. You invited 40 people to tell me I'm isolating. A few heads turned. Someone in the back let out a quiet, nervous laugh before catching themselves. My mom didn't break. This is exactly what we mean. Deflection, humor, instead of accountability. I nodded once. Got it. Jokes are now a symptom. Connor kept going. Slide after slide. Carefully selected moments, messages pulled out of context, numbers that meant nothing without the rest of the data. It was almost impressive. If I didn't know better, I'd think they'd hired someone to build the narrative. Sloane stepped in again, moving closer to the center, holding the same stack of papers like it was evidence in a courtroom. We've been tracking this for a long time, she said softly. We didn't want it to come to this. Tracking. Interesting word. She started pointing to sections in the packet. Dates, notes, observations from people in the room. You'll see here, she said, gesturing to a page, multiple instances where Blair expressed confusion, stress, and instability. I flipped to that page. Confusion, stress, instability. Or in normal language, having a job. I glanced up at the people reading along. They weren't dumb, but they weren't analysts either. Give people a structured document, some emotional framing, and a microphone, and they'll fill in the gaps themselves. That's what my family was counting on. Sloane's voice softened even more, like she was about to cry. We love you, Blair. This isn't about blaming you. It's about helping you before it gets worse. I tilted my head slightly. Worse than what? She hesitated for half a second, just enough to notice. My dad stepped forward to fill the gap. Before you destroy your life completely, he said, his tone shifting from concerned to authoritative. There it was, the real voice. Not soft, not supportive, directive. I looked at him. You're all very committed to this. I'll give you that. He ignored the comment and nodded toward the coffee table. That's when I saw it. A pen. Placed neatly on top of a folder, centered, waiting. No one had mentioned it yet, but it was there like the punchline of a joke they hadn't told. Connor paused the slideshow. The room went quiet again. My mom lowered the microphone slightly, stepping closer to me now instead of performing for the crowd. Blair, she said softer this time, like she was switching strategies. We can't force you to accept help, but we can ask you to trust us. I didn't respond. She nodded toward the table. We've prepared something that will make this easier. For you. Of course you have. My dad walked over, picked up the folder, and opened it with a level of ceremony that felt almost rehearsed. This is a voluntary agreement, he said loud enough for the room. Temporary, just until you're stable again. He turned the document toward me. Same one I'd just seen. Voluntary conservatorship, power of attorney, full financial and legal control. Temporary. Sure. You sign this, he continued, and we handle everything. Bills, accounts, decisions. You can focus on getting better. I let a second pass. Then another. Getting better from what I asked. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he gestured to the people around us. From what everyone here can clearly see. Ah, crowd validation. Classic move. I looked around slowly, meeting a few eyes. Some looked away, some nodded, like they were part of something important. 40 people, carefully chosen, positioned as witnesses. Not for me, for whatever came next. My mom stepped in again, voice softer, almost pleading. We're not trying to take anything from you. I glanced down at the document. You're asking for full control over everything I have, I said. That's literally the definition of taking. She shook her head quickly. No, it's protection. I almost laughed, but I didn't. It would have been too easy. Instead, I leaned forward slightly, elbows on my knees. Let me guess, I said. If I don't sign, this gets worse. Silence. Then my dad spoke. If you don't sign, he said, calm and measured, we'll have to take additional steps. There it was. Such as I asked. Connor shifted uncomfortably. Sloane looked down at her papers. My dad didn't hesitate. We contact your employer, he said. We explain the situation, your condition, your instability. He paused, letting that land. We have names, he added. Of course you do. Or at least you think you do. I sat back again, letting the weight of the room settle. This wasn't concern. This wasn't even manipulation anymore. This was leverage. Sign the paper, or they burn my career. Simple. Clean. Illegal. I looked down at the document again, this time letting my eyes move slower. Formatting. Clauses. Signature lines. And then I saw it again. The notary section. Already stamped. Already signed. Before I'd even walked in the door, I glanced up just briefly toward the second row. Same man. Same still posture. Trying very hard to look like he wasn't involved. That was the moment everything locked into place. They hadn't just planned this. They'd finalized it. All they needed was my signature to make it look legitimate. I reached toward the pen. A few people leaned forward slightly. Anticipation. Relief. They thought it was working. My fingers stopped just short of touching it. Instead, I picked up the document again. "You really went all out," I said, almost conversational. No one responded. I tapped the bottom of the page lightly. Got it notarized and everything. My dad's expression didn't change. We wanted to be prepared. Prepared. That's one word for it. I set the document back down on the table exactly where it had been. Then I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. No sudden movements, no drama, just a simple, quiet shift. "I'm not going to argue about whether I'm stable," I said, unlocking the screen. A few people frowned, confused by the change in direction. Connor stepped forward slightly. "What are you doing?" I didn't look at him. "Something you probably should have done before setting this up," I said. My thumb moved across the screen, logging in. Secure dashboard, clean interface, numbers where they should be. Real numbers, not the ones on their slideshow. The room stayed quiet, but the energy changed. Subtle but noticeable, like something had gone slightly off script. My dad's voice sharpened. "Blair, this isn't the time for distractions." I glanced up at him, finally letting a hint of something show. Not anger. Not fear. Recognition. "No," I said calmly, "this is exactly the time." And as the screen finished loading, I stopped looking at them and started looking at what they'd been trying so hard to hide. My thumb hovered over the screen for a second, then I turned the phone slightly so only I could see it. I didn't rush. When people build a stage this carefully, the worst thing you can do is move faster than they expect. You let them sit in it. My dad took a step closer. "Put the phone away," he said, low enough to sound controlled, loud enough for the room to hear. I didn't. Instead, I kept reading. The document on the table wasn't the problem. It was just the tool. The real question was why tonight? Why the crowd? Why the pressure to sign immediately? People don't organize 40 witnesses for something optional. They needed urgency. Which meant there was a clock I hadn't been told about yet. I scrolled through my dashboard, pulling up account summaries, linked assets, anything that could give me a hint. Nothing unusual at first glance. Clean, stable, boring, which is exactly how I like it. Behind me, my mom's voice softened again, switching back to the concerned tone. "Blair, honey, you don't have to do this alone. That's why we're here." I let her talk. Connor shifted his weight. I could hear him tapping the side of the laptop, a nervous habit he'd never grown out of. "Just sign it," he said under his breath, not quite quiet enough. I glanced up at him. "You sound stressed." He forced a smile that didn't hold. "I'm just trying to help." "Right." I went back to the screen. Then I opened a different tab. Background checks. Not the surface-level kind people run out of curiosity. The kind that cross-reference activity, flag anomalies, connect things that aren't supposed to be connected. I typed in my own information. Social security number. Full legal name. If there was a clock, this is where it would show up. My dad picked up the pen again and set it closer to me, like proximity would somehow make it inevitable. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. I didn't look at him. "You already made it hard. I'm just catching up." A few people exchanged glances. The tone was shifting even if they didn't fully understand why yet. The results loaded. At first, nothing unusual. Standard entries. Credit lines I recognized. Accounts I'd opened, closed, monitored. Then a flag. Recent activity. 3 weeks ago. I tapped it. Aloan. Comercial. Amount $250,000. I didn't react. Didn't blink. Didn't change posture. Just read. Secured against a property. My property. Not the one my family knew about. The one I'd bought quietly 2 years ago under a separate entity specifically to avoid conversations like this. The application details opened in a clean, structured format. Submitted online. Approved within 48 hours. Current status under review for fraud verification. There it was. The clock. Verification scheduled for tomorrow morning, in person. I let that sit for a second. Behind me, my mom kept talking, filling the silence like she thought she was still in control of it. "We can handle everything for you," she said. "You don't have to worry about bills or responsibilities right now." I almost admired the timing. Not subtle. Not even close. I scrolled further. Application data. IP address. Location. I tapped the log. It expanded. Single origin. Residential network. Familiar. I didn't need the label, but it was there anyway. My parents' house. The same house I was sitting in. I leaned back slightly on the stool, letting out a slow breath. Note shock. Confirmation. I'd been wondering how far they were willing to go. Now I knew. Connor spoke again, louder this time, trying to pull control back. "Blair, seriously. Everyone's here because they care about you. Don't make this a scene." I looked up at him. "This isn't a scene," I said. "This is a timeline." He frowned, not following. "Good." I turned the phone in my hand, glancing briefly at the document on the table again. Power of attorney. Full control over my finances. Immediate effect upon signature. They didn't need it to help me. They needed it to fix something they'd already done. Retroactively. My dad's voice sharpened. "Enough. You've had your moment. Sign the paper." I looked at him, really looked this time. "Or what I asked." He didn't hesitate. "Or we move forward without your cooperation," he said, "and that won't end well for you." There it was again. Not concern. Threat. I nodded once like I was considering it. Then I looked down at my phone again and opened the loan details one more time, slower, this time like I was reviewing something routine. Borrower my name. Signature digital. Authorization confirmed. Except I hadn't done any of it. I zoomed in on the signature field. Forgery. Clean, but not perfect. Connor shifted again, stepping closer to the coffee table. "What are you even looking at?" I tilted the phone slightly, just enough for him to see the screen. "Not everything. Just the amount. $250,000,000. His face changed. Fast. Subtle, but not subtle enough. That was all I needed. I turned the phone back toward myself. "Interesting number," I said casually. No one responded immediately. My mom looked between us, trying to read something she didn't understand yet. "What is that?" she asked. I didn't answer her. Instead, I looked at my dad. "You said this was about helping me manage my finances," I said. "So let's talk about them." His jaw tightened. "This isn't the time." "It's exactly the time," I cut in calm, not raising my voice. "Because according to this, I took out a $250,000 loan 3 weeks ago." The room shifted. People straightened in their chairs, papers lowered, attention snapped into focus. My mom blinked. "That's not possible." I nodded. "I agree." Connor took a step back. Small. Instinctive. "So either I did something I don't remember," I continued, "which would support your whole lost grip on reality argument." I let that hang for half a second. "Or someone here did it for me." Silence. Real silence this time. Not the organized kind. The kind that happens when people realize they might be in the wrong story. My dad's voice dropped. "You're misunderstanding what you're seeing." I shook my head slightly. "No. I understand it perfectly." I tapped the screen again, pulling up the IP log, but I didn't show it yet. "Not yet. You needed me unstable," I said, more to myself than to them. "You needed witnesses. You needed urgency." I looked up, meeting his eyes. "And you needed my signature tonight." No one moved. No one spoke. Even my mom stayed quiet. Because now, for the first time since I walked in, the script wasn't theirs anymore. And I hadn't even started explaining. I stopped scrolling and held the phone still, letting the silence do its job. You could feel the room recalibrating. Not everyone understood what I just said, but they understood enough to know this wasn't going the way it was supposed to. My mom recovered first. She always did. "Blair," she said carefully, "this is exactly what we were worried about. Jumping to conclusions, seeing things that aren't there." I raised a hand slightly, not to interrupt, just to slow her down. "No," I said. "This isn't interpretation. This is data." I stood up from the stool. First time since I walked in, it changed the angle of everything. I wasn't the subject in the center anymore. I was just another person in the room. Connor's eyes followed me immediately. "What are you doing?" I didn't answer him. Instead, I stepped toward the TV, toward the laptop he'd been using to run their slideshow. He shifted instinctively, like he wanted to block me, then stopped. Too many people watching, too many variables he couldn't control. "Relax," I said. "I'm not breaking anything." That got a few quiet reactions. Someone coughed. Someone else shifted in their seat. I reached for the HDMI cable. Connor hesitated, then let go of it. He thought he knew what I was about to do. That was the problem. I plugged the cable into my phone. The screen behind us flickered. Their slideshow disappeared. For a second, there was just a blank blue screen. Then my dashboard appeared. Clean, structured, no emotional framing, no captions telling people what to think. Just numbers, accounts, assets, transactions. The room leaned forward without realizing it. People trust screens more than speeches. My dad stepped closer. "Turn that off." I didn't. Instead, I tapped the section I wanted. The loan. $250 000. It filled the screen. Big enough that even the people in the back could read it. There was a ripple through the room, not loud but noticeable, the kind of sound people make when they're trying not to react. My mom frowned. "What is that?" "You tell me," I said. Connor moved toward the laptop again, slower this time. "This doesn't prove anything." I glanced at him. "It proves something. You're just hoping it's not what it looks like." I tapped again. Application details. Timeline. Submission date. Approval date. Current status. Then I tapped one more time. IP log. It expanded across the screen. Lines of data, addresses, timestamps, and one line highlighted. Same location. This house. The room went quiet again. Not the polite kind. The real kind. My dad's voice dropped. "You're misinterpreting technical information." I almost smiled. "That would be a stronger argument," I said, "if this wasn't literally my job." That landed. A couple of people in the front row looked at each other. One of my professors straightened slightly, actually reading now instead of just observing. Connor shook his head quickly. "Anyone could have used that network. That doesn't mean anything." "Sure," I said. "Anyone." I stepped slightly to the side so the screen was fully visible to everyone. "Then we can walk through it together," I added, "because the bank already is." That got their attention. My mom's voice sharpened. "What bank?" I looked at her. "The one that flagged this for fraud," I said. "The one that wants to verify everything in person tomorrow morning." No one moved. Connor's face lost whatever color it had left. My dad didn't say anything. That was new. I let a second pass. Then another. "You didn't tell them that part, did you?" I said, glancing at Connor. He swallowed. Hard. This is private information," he said. "You shouldn't even have access to that yet." I tilted my head slightly. "It's in my name." That ended that. Sloan stepped forward, trying to pull something back together. "Blair, we're not here to argue about numbers. We're here because you need help." I looked at her. "You handed out a timeline of my mental decline," I said. "Let's add a new entry." No one laughed. "Good." I tapped the screen again. 3 weeks ago," I said, reading it exactly as it appeared. "A $250,000 commercial loan was taken out under my identity, secured against a property I own." I paused. "Without my authorization." That word mattered. Authorization. Legal. Clear. My dad finally spoke. You're making accusations you can't prove. I nodded once. You're right. Then I pointed at the screen. So let's prove it. I zoomed in on the application log. Timestamps, access points, device identifiers. Not things you fake easily. Application submitted from this network, I said. Multiple sessions. Same origin, same device fingerprint. I looked back at him. That's not random. He didn't answer. Connor tried again. Even if that were true, it doesn't mean we did anything wrong. Maybe you authorized it and forgot. There it was. That angle. I let out a small breath through my nose. Right, I said. So your entire case is that I'm unstable enough to forget taking out a $250,000 loan. I glanced at the pen on the table, but stable enough to sign over full control of everything I own. No response. Because there wasn't one. The room shifted again. You could feel it now. People weren't just listening. They were evaluating. My mom stepped closer, lowering her voice like she could still pull me back into something smaller, more manageable. Blair, she said, we can fix this quietly. There's no reason to involve anyone else. I looked at her. That was the first honest thing she'd said all night. Quietly. Of course. I nodded slightly. You're right, it can be fixed. For a second, relief flickered across her face. Then I kept going. Tomorrow morning, I added, in front of the bank's fraud division. It disappeared. Connor took a step forward, sharper this time. You don't need to go there. We can handle it here. I turned to him. No, I said simply. You can't. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Because now we were past interpretation. Past narrative. This was documentation. And documentation doesn't care about family meetings. I looked around the room slowly. 40 people. All of them brought here to watch me fall apart. Now they were watching something else. I reached down and picked up the document from the table. The power of attorney. Held it up slightly. This, I said, isn't about helping me. I glanced at the screen behind me. It's about fixing that. No one argued. Because now they could see it. Not the story. The structure. The plan. And for the first time since I walked in, my family didn't look like they were in control. They looked like they were trying to keep something from collapsing. And it was already too late for that. I set the document back on the table without looking away from the screen, letting them sit in what everyone could now see. My dad tried to reset the room. You could see it in the way he straightened his shoulders, like posture alone could pull control back. This is being taken out of context, he said. We're here because Blair needs support, not what I cut in calm. Not accountability. That word stuck. A few people shifted again. One of the neighbors folded his arms. My professor in the back leaned forward, actually paying attention now instead of politely observing. Connor moved toward me faster this time. Give me the cable, he said. I didn't move. No, I said. He reached anyway. I stepped slightly to the side, not aggressive, just enough to block him without making it look like a fight. Careful, I added. 40 witnesses, remember. That stopped him. He looked around the room, then back at me, calculating. Too many eyes, too much risk. Sloane jumped in, voice tight. Blair, you're turning this into something it's not. I glanced at her. You printed 40 copies of a false narrative about me. I think we're past that. That landed harder than I expected. Not because of the words, but because people were now comparing both versions in real time, what they'd been told versus what they were seeing. I turned back to the screen. Let's keep this simple, I said. You all were told I'm unstable, irresponsible, and incapable of managing my life. I tapped once, bringing up a different section. Assets. Balances. Clean. Structured. Stable. Numbers that didn't match the story. A murmur moved through the room. My mom shook her head quickly. That doesn't mean anything. Money doesn't equal stability. True, I said, but it does mean I can manage my finances. I tapped again. Transaction history. Organized. Consistent. No erratic behavior. No chaos. Which is interesting, I continued, because the only irregular transaction here, I paused deliberately, is that loan. Silence. Connor tried again, but his voice wasn't as steady this time. You're twisting things. I looked at him. No. I'm connecting them. I pointed at the screen. You needed me to look incapable, I said. So when this gets reviewed, I gestured lightly toward the room. You have 40 people ready to say I couldn't have possibly understood what I was doing. A few heads turned sharply at that, because now they understood their role. Not guests. Not support. Witnesses. My dad's voice dropped lower, more controlled, more dangerous. That's a serious accusation. I nodded. So is fraud. That word hit differently. No one spoke for a second. Then my mom stepped in faster, trying to pull it back again. No one here is committing fraud. You're confused, Blair. That's why we're trying to help you. I exhaled quietly, still playing the same angle. I tapped the screen again, bringing up the loan status. Flagged for fraud verification, I read out loud. In-person confirmation required. I looked around the room. That means someone at the bank already thinks something's wrong. A few people straightened. That mattered to them more than anything I'd said so far. External validation. Not family. Not emotion. Authority. Connor ran a hand through his hair, pacing now. This doesn't have to go that far, he said. We can fix it before that happens. There it was. Fix it. I watched him for a second. Fix what I asked. He stopped. Didn't answer. Because there was only one answer, and saying it out loud would end everything. My dad stepped forward again, voice sharper now. Enough. This conversation is over. He reached for the laptop. I moved first. Not fast, just faster than he expected. My hand came down lightly on the edge of it, stopping him without making a scene. No, I said. We held eye contact. For the first time, he didn't look controlled. He looked like he was calculating damage. I leaned slightly closer, lowering my voice just enough that only the front row could clearly hear. You didn't think I'd check, I said. His jaw tightened. You thought you could build a story around me, and I'd just sit in it. I straightened again, letting my voice carry this time. But stories fall apart when the numbers don't match. I stepped back from the laptop, giving everyone a clear view of the screen again. No barriers. No interruptions. Just the data. Sloane tried one last time, her voice softer, now less confident. Blair, please. You're embarrassing yourself. I looked at her. No, I said. I'm embarrassing you. That landed harder than anything else. Because it was true. The room wasn't on their side anymore. Not fully. Not safely. People weren't nodding along now. They were watching, waiting, reassessing everything they'd been told in the last 10 minutes. My professor in the back finally spoke. Blair, he said carefully, are you saying this loan was taken out without your consent? I turned toward him. Yes, I said. I am. Simple. Clear. No drama. He nodded slowly, then looked at my parents. That shift mattered. Not because of who he was, because of what it represented. The room wasn't unified anymore. It was splitting. My dad noticed it too, which meant he was running out of time. He stepped forward again, but this time there was no calm tone, no controlled delivery. Just pressure. Sign the document, he said, now. No explanation. No framing. Just the demand. I looked at the paper on the table, then at the pen, then back at him. You're not asking, I said. He didn't respond. Because he wasn't. I picked up the pen, slowly. The room leaned in again. Hope, relief, desperation. They thought this was the moment everything snapped back into place. I held it for a second. Then I set it back down exactly where it had been. "No," I said. "Flat. Final." Connor let out a sharp breath. "You don't understand what you're doing." I looked at him. "No," I said. "You don't." I reached into my pocket again and pulled out my phone. Same calm motion as before. No rush. No hesitation. I unlocked it, scrolled once, then stopped. The call timer was still running. I turned the screen slightly just enough to confirm what I already knew. 45 minutes. Still connected. I lifted my head and looked around the room one more time. 40 people. Every one of them had just watched this unfold. Every word, every reaction, every mistake. I pressed the speaker button and set the phone down on the table between us. A calm voice filled the room the second the speaker turned on. "Miss Harrison, I'm still here." It cut through everything. No emotion, no hesitation, just clarity. My mom froze mid-step. Connor stopped moving. My dad didn't blink, but the change was there, small, sharp, immediate. 40 people went completely still. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. "I apologize for the delay," the voice continued. "I wanted to make sure we had a complete record before proceeding." A complete record. That landed exactly where it needed to. My dad found his voice first. "Who is this?" There was a brief pause. Not uncertainty, just control. "My name is Daniel Reeves," the voice said. "Senior Investigator, Fraud Division. I've been on this call for the past 45 minutes. No one spoke. Connor looked at me like he'd missed something obvious. You had someone listening." I glanced at him. "You invited an audience." I made sure I had one too. That wasn't even the point, but it was the only part he could process. My mom shook her head, stepping forward. "This is a misunderstanding. We're a family. We're trying to help our daughter." "Ma'am," the investigator said, calm but firm, "I'm going to ask that you stop speaking for a moment." She stopped. Not because she wanted to, because she had to. Authority does that. The room shifted again, deeper this time. This wasn't internal anymore. This wasn't family framing or social pressure. This was external. Real. Documented. My dad stepped forward, trying to regain ground. "You have no right to record a private conversation in my home." "I'm not recording your home," Reeves replied. "I'm documenting a fraud case involving a $250,000 loan issued under Miss Harrison's identity. Clean. Direct. No room to twist it." A few people in the room exhaled quietly, like they'd been holding their breath without realizing it. Connor ran a hand over his face. "This is insane," he muttered. "Is it?" I said. He didn't answer. Because now it wasn't just me saying it. The investigator continued. "We have confirmed that the loan application was submitted from this location. We also have a record of the digital signature and the authorization chain." I watched my dad. Still standing, still trying to look in control. But his silence said everything. Reeves went on. "Based on what I've heard over the last 45 minutes, there are additional concerns regarding coercion and attempted retroactive authorization." That phrase hit harder than anything else. Not because it sounded dramatic. Because it was accurate. Sloane's voice came out thin. This isn't what it sounds like." I looked at her. "It's exactly what it sounds like," I said. She didn't push back again. My mom tried one more time, but the tone was gone now. No performance left, just panic under control. "We can resolve this privately," she said, looking at the phone like it was a person she could negotiate with. "There's no need to escalate." "Ma'am," Reeves said again, steady, "this is already escalated." That was the end of that. Connor started pacing faster now, not caring who was watching anymore. Okay, this got out of hand," he said. "We were just trying to fix a situation." There it was. Fix. Again. I watched him for a second. What situation? I asked. He stopped, looked at me, then at the phone, then back at me. He didn't answer, because now every word mattered. My dad stepped in sharper, now abandoning the calm completely. "Don't say anything else," he snapped at Connor. "Too late." Connor laughed once, short and tight. "What, we're just gonna pretend none of this happened?" That crack was all it took. Pressure had been building the entire time. Now it had somewhere to go. He turned toward me, voice rising. "You weren't using that money," he said. "You were just sitting on it like it didn't matter." There it was. Not polished, not framed, just raw. A few people in the room shifted uncomfortably. I didn't move. Connor kept going, words coming faster now. "I had a company to run, people depending on me, and you're over here acting like you're above all of it." My mom tried to cut in. "Connor." "No," he snapped. "She needs to hear it." I tilted my head slightly. "I'm hearing it." He pointed at the screen behind me. That money could have saved everything. I glanced back at the number. 250美元000. Then back at him. "You mean your company?" I said. He didn't deny it. My dad stepped forward, voice louder now, no control left. "We are a family," he said. "What's hers is ours. That's how this works." There it was. Not hidden, not implied. Stated. Clear. A few people in the room reacted immediately. Not loud, but visible. Someone shook their head. Someone else leaned back like they needed distance. I looked at him. "That's not how the law works," I said. Reeves spoke again, cutting cleanly through the room. "For the record, that statement supports intent." Middat froze. Not because he didn't understand. Because he did. Connor let out a breath that sounded more like a laugh. "So what now? We're criminals," he said, looking around the room like he expected someone to back him up. No one did. Not anymore. Sloane stepped back slightly, putting space between herself and both of them. That told me everything. The room wasn't just splitting, it was separating. My mom's voice came out softer now, almost breaking. "Blair, please, we can still fix this." I looked at her. "No," I said. "You can't." I reached down and picked up the document again. Held it for a second. Then tore it. Slow, deliberate, clean. Once. Twice. 4 pieces. I dropped them onto the table. No one moved to stop me. No one said anything. Because now it was over. Not the consequences. Just the illusion that they were in control of any part of it. I looked at the phone. "Anything else you need from me?" I asked. Reeves answered immediately. "No, Miss Harrison. You've been very helpful." Helpful. That word carried a different weight now. "We'll proceed from here," he added. "You can expect follow-up tomorrow." I nodded once. Understood. I picked up the phone and ended the call. The silence that followed wasn't organized. It wasn't staged. It was real. And for the first time since I walked into that room, it didn't belong to them. I slid the phone back into my pocket and looked at the room like it finally made sense. No one rushed to speak. That was new. 40 people who had shown up ready to watch me fall apart were now trying to figure out how to stand without picking a side too quickly. My dad was the first to move, but it wasn't forward. It was a step back, small and controlled, like he could reverse the last 10 minutes by changing his position. It didn't work. My mom looked at him, then at me, then at the torn pieces on the table. "Blair," she said softer than before, "we didn't mean for this to go this far." I nodded once. "You meant for it to go exactly as far as it needed to." She didn't argue. Connor let out a short breath and looked around the room, finally noticing the shift. No one was nodding anymore. No one was supporting him. He tried anyway. "This doesn't have to be a big deal," he said. "It's just a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion." One of the neighbors spoke up from the second row. "A $250,000 loan isn't a misunderstanding." That was the first time someone from the audience stepped in. It changed everything. Connor's eyes snapped toward him. You don't know the full story. The neighbor didn't back down. Then explain it. Connor opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Because there wasn't a version of the story that sounded better out loud. Sloane moved toward the front door, quick, quiet. Maybe we should just end this, she said, reaching for the handle. Everyone can go home. Too late. People weren't looking for an exit anymore. They were looking for answers. Someone near the back said, "We were told this was an intervention." Another voice followed sharper. "This looks like something else." I let them talk. For the first time, I didn't need to manage anything. The room was doing it for me. My dad stepped forward again, trying to regain control, but the tone was gone. "This is a private family matter," he said. "We'd appreciate it if everyone—" "No," I said. Not loud, just clear. He stopped. I looked around the room, meeting a few eyes, not all of them. "You were invited here under false pretenses," I said. "You were told you were helping me." A couple of people nodded slowly. "That's not why you're here," I continued. "You're here because they needed witnesses." Silence. Real understanding this time. Sloane's hand froze on the doorknob. "What are you talking about?" she said, but it didn't sound like a challenge. It sounded like she already knew. I nodded toward the torn document on the table. That wasn't just a form. That was control. Financial, legal, immediate. I let that sit for a second. "And if I signed it tonight in front of all of you," I added, "it would have looked voluntary." A few people exchanged looks. One of the older men shook his head slowly, like he was putting pieces together he didn't want to see. My mom's voice came out tight. "We were trying to protect you." I looked at her. From what I asked, she didn't answer. Because now there wasn't a script left. Connor stepped forward again, but slower this time, less certain. "We were trying to fix a problem," he said. I nodded. "You created one." That landed. He ran a hand through his hair again, pacing in a tight circle. "You don't understand how bad things got." "I do," I said. "You just don't like that I understand." He stopped, looked at me, then looked away. One of my professors spoke again, voice measured. "Blair, are you planning to pursue this legally?" I didn't hesitate. "It's already in motion," I said. That answer shifted the room again. Not louder, heavier. Because now it wasn't hypothetical. My dad's voice dropped almost quiet now. "You would really do this to your family?" I looked at him for a long second. "You already did it," I said. No anger. No raised voice. Just the truth. My mom took a step toward me, hands slightly out, like she could still reach something that wasn't there anymore. "We can still work this out," she said. "We don't need outsiders involved." I shook my head once. "You involved them." I gestured around the room. "You just didn't think it would go this way." That ended that. Connor looked at the door, then back at me, then at the phone in my pocket, like he was calculating something he didn't fully understand. "Is someone coming?" he asked. I shrugged slightly. Eventually, that was enough. Sloane stepped away from the door, not leaving anymore, just standing there like she didn't know where to go. The room stayed still. No one rushed out. No one tried to smooth it over, because there was nothing left to smooth. I reached down, picked up one of the torn pieces of the document, and turned it over in my hand. Neat paper, clean print, official formatting, all of it built on something that didn't exist. I set it back down. Then I looked at everyone one more time. "You don't need to stay," I said, "but you should understand what you just saw." A few people nodded. One of them said quietly, "We do." That was enough. I didn't need anything else from them. I turned toward the door. No one tried to stop me. Not my dad. Not my mom. Not Connor. Not Sloane. Because for the first time, they didn't have anything left to use. No narrative. No pressure. No control. Just consequences. I reached for the handle, paused for a second, then looked back once more. Not at them. At the room. At what they'd built. And how fast it had come apart. Then I opened the door. Cool air hit my face the second I stepped outside. It felt quieter out there, even though I could still hear voices rising behind me. Not yelling, just too many people talking at once, trying to process something they hadn't signed up for. I walked to my car without rushing. No dramatic exit, no slamming doors. Just distance. I got in, closed the door, and for a second I didn't start the engine. I just sat there, hands on the wheel, breathing steady, not shaking, not overwhelmed. Just done. Through the windshield, the house looked exactly the same. Same lights, same driveway, same place I'd walked into thinking it was a normal dinner. But now I could see the movement inside more clearly. People weren't sitting anymore. They were standing, clustered, turning toward my parents, toward Connor, toward each other. No one was looking for me. That part was over. I started the engine. The sound cut clean through the quiet in the car, grounding everything. For a moment, I considered driving off immediately. Then I looked back at the house one more time. My mom was near the center of the room, hands raised slightly, trying to explain something to a group of people who weren't nodding anymore. My dad stood off to the side, rigid, like he was trying to decide whether to stay silent or regain control. He chose silence. Connor was pacing again, faster now, talking too much, saying too little. Sloane had moved back from the door and was standing near the wall, watching everything like she didn't recognize it anymore. That was the part that stayed with me. Not the fraud, not the document. The moment they realized the story they built didn't work anymore. I shifted the car into drive, pulled out slowly. No one came outside. No one followed. I turned onto the street and kept going. The house disappeared in the rearview mirror faster than I expected. That was fine. I didn't need to watch it shrink. I drove for a while without music. No calls, no messages. Just the road and the quiet. At the first red light, my phone buzzed. I didn't look at it. Whatever it was, it could wait. When the light turned green, I kept going. 10 minutes later, it buzzed again. Then again. Predictable. I let it happen. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the notifications had stacked up. Calls, texts, family group chat lighting up like it had something left to say. It didn't. I parked, turned off the engine, and finally picked up my phone. Missed calls from my mom. 3 from Connor. 1 from an unknown number I already knew wasn't random. Messages came in faster than I could read them all at once. "We need to talk. You don't understand what you've done. Call me. Please." That last one was from my mom. I read it once. Then I locked the screen. Not because I was ignoring them. Because there was nothing left to clarify. I got out of the car and walked inside. My house was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels empty. The kind that feels stable. I set my keys down, kicked off my shoes, and walked into the living room. No audience. No chairs arranged in a semicircle. No script. Just space. I sat down on the couch and leaned back, letting the silence settle properly this time. Not forced. Not controlled. Real. A few minutes passed. Then my phone rang again. Unknown number. I answered. "Blair Harrison," I said. "Miss Harrison," the voice on the other end replied. "This is Daniel Reeves." Same tone as before. Calm, direct. "I wanted to confirm that we'll proceed with the verification tomorrow morning," he said. "Based on what we've documented, there will likely be further steps." "I understand," I said. There was a brief pause. "You handled that situation very carefully," he added. "That made a difference." I thought about that for a second. Carefully. Not emotionally. Not reactively. Just correctly. "Thank you," I said. "We'll be in touch," he replied. The line went dead. I set the phone down on the table in front of me, and for the first time all night I let myself exhale fully. No tension left to manage. No room to read. No one else's expectations to navigate. Just clarity. I leaned forward slightly, resting my elbows on my knees, and looked around my own space. Everything where it should be, everything earned, everything intact. That mattered more than anything they'd tried to take. My phone buzzed again. I didn't pick it up. Instead, I walked to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. Simple. Normal. Real. I took a sip, set the glass down, and leaned against the counter. There was a version of this night where I walked out of that house smaller, apologizing, confused, signing something I didn't fully understand just to make it stop. That version didn't happen because I paid attention, because I checked, because I didn't let someone else define what I was seeing. I picked up my phone one more time, scrolled through the messages without opening any of them. Then I turned it face down and left it on the counter. Tomorrow would come. The bank. The questions. Whatever followed. That was fine. For now, I was exactly where I needed to be. Not in that house. Not in that story. Not in that version of myself they tried to create. Just here. In control. And finally, quiet.